Hey, my name is Clemens, and in this video I'll show you a few tricks that you can use to actually get better completions in either Azure OpenAI, in OpenAI, or even in ChatGPT. So the first trick I want to show you is, let's say we start with something like this where we query the model for some information. So we used the same example in another video earlier. Let's say classify Microsoft, UBS, and FedEx into their verticals. If we run this, the model does a good job and classifies all correctly. Now we can even ask it also write the revenue for 2020, and it starts to print something. Now let's add actually something else, and let's add another company that the model should not know. So let's come up with something like Clemens Incorporated. If we run it, we see it actually does the same thing, but it classifies us as retail, which is not correct, right? It should actually not give an answer. And it also does know the revenue, which is in this case actually the correct answer. However, there's one thing in this prompt that's also not great, and this is the following. Look at UBS. Right now it says the revenue for UBS in 2020 was 45 billion. If I regenerate the answer, it's 48, and if I regenerate it again, it's 43, and if I regenerate it again, it's 45, and if I regenerate it, it's 51. So the number is not really reliable. So what can we do here? One very easy thing we can do is we can just say, if you don't know the answer, or if you are unsure, then just write NA. And by that, we will now see the Microsoft number is still there. It might not be 100% correct either, and it's still fluctuating a little bit, but the UBS number was heavily going up and down, so it's now honestly saying that it doesn't know. And the same here for Clemens Inc. It says it doesn't know the vertical, which is correct, and it also says that it doesn't know the revenue, obviously. So a second thing that we can do pretty easily is we can instruct the model to give us back different formatting of our data. So for example, we can even say here, please return JSON, and then we now specify the keys. We do company, vertical, and revenue. And if we do that, let's see how it looks. Okay, in this case, we get a JSON object with a hash back, but in this case, what I actually wanted was an array, and we can say return the companies as an array. Now we get an array of companies that are represented in the hashes. So that's an easy way to do it. Now we can actually do the same thing, for example, if we want YAML. Let's see, I think that should probably directly work. Yeah, something like this. We can probably change it a little bit and tell it what to do, but for my experience, YAML would also work. I mean, I prefer JSON because you can easily parse it in, for example, Python code. We can also ask for CSV, even though it sometimes seems to struggle a little bit. Let's say return a CSV with the header. What do we need for the header? We need, again, company, vertical, and revenue. Okay, it does it in one line. That's not great. So we tell it, write the header and then one new line per company. Okay, and now it looks good. Another thing that can be useful is if we use Markdown. So we can ask it to write Markdown, write it as Markdown, and use a table, for example. Okay, this nicely formats a table, or we can even write it as Markdown and use a list with sublists. Maybe that works. Yeah, something like this. So you see, Markdown is also pretty easily possible. Cool, so let's switch to a different example. And this is tip number 3. In many cases, you probably want to extract information from unstructured documents. So in this case here, I have an NDA between two people about some restaurant stuff. And there's also written like what happens if somebody breaks the contract. And in this case, I want to use the zero-shot learning approach to extract all the entities. So what you can do is this. I usually do the following. First of all, I specify where my payload starts by naming what it is, in this case, the NDA. And then I now say from the NDA, please extract the following information. For example, when was the contract signed? Then we maybe want to ask who signed it. We want to ask for the address of the person who signed it. And then maybe also a fine for breaching the contract. And then again, since I probably want to use this downstream in some process, I would say answer in JSON using the keys when signed, signer, address, and the fine. And then maybe we even want to format the date because this is here written out. So we can even say something like format the when signed as month, day, and then the year. So if we run this, it extracts everything correctly. Also, the date is nicely formatted. And sometimes we could even do something like this. I think this sometimes helps the model to know a little bit better where it should put the answer. Even it probably also helps with the JSON, so I might not even need to specify it up here. Now this helps us to extract stuff, and I think we can use exactly the same approach if we want to do question answering. And let's assume I want to ask some questions here. I typically like to specify it like this. Here's my content block with my payload where I want to operate on, and then I say, given the content above, so it knows where it should search for the answer, please answer the following question. And in this case, I do the question like, who signed the contract? And then we again give it the A for answer, so it knows where to write the answer. And then it says, okay, this guy. Now, again, the same thing applies here. We can ask, was the signer of the contract married? And it says, no, the signer is actually not married, even though that's maybe not the right answer. So again, here we should always state, if you can't find the answer in the content, then write, what do we write? Not found. And then we also tell it, do not come up with a random answer. And this now should actually help to solve this problem, because now it says not found the correct answer. And this also helps to stop hallucinating when you do question answering. And I think this is especially important later when we go in the next video into embeddings, where you then query information from the top matching document. Lastly, I have one more example, and let me add the example here. So I have a news article that I actually generated with OpenAI. It's in German. So in this case, I want to get a one-sentence summary from the news article. So I do the same thing as before, extract the following information from the news article below. And then we set a one-sentence summary in German. And maybe we also want all German states. And now let's see. If we run this, we get the one-sentence summary in German. Okay, that actually looks good. And then also the German states are all here from what I can tell. And this is good because this now helps us to actually also operate on non-English text. So in this case here, German. And my learning is, and might not be always true, but I typically tend to write my instructions in English and then have the payload where it should operate on in German. And that seems to work really well. And then we just tell it what language we want the output to be in, because sometimes it actually automatically switches back to English, which might be okay in some cases, but here I explicitly want a German summary. And then the other good thing is, since the model is trained on a very large data set, right, it also knows about what I mean when I say German states, for example. Cool. I hope these 5 tips were helpful, and see you in the next video.